All right, let's go ahead and stop the countdown early. Let's just jump into it. What's up, guys? Pastor JPO is away from the chair. I don't know if Al, did you get your mic working yet?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I can hear you. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can help us answer some of these questions.
Okay. This is it was amazing.
Did you enjoy our first one? How do you think it went?
I think it went absolutely fantastic. I was just going to say on there that, if just a few took the whole gospel to the world, how much more can these 100 and I think it was up to 250 or something people, how much more can we take it to the metaverse, And so it was very informative and just very encouraging. I think a lot of times when we hear a concept like metaverse, meta in its small form, META, means beyond. So it's kind of beyond what we could even think. And so sometimes it just seems like, oh, it'd be so hard. But the way it was broken down today just kind of really compelled all of us to get started with something like that we can do it. So it's just excellent.
That's great. Yeah. Are you wearing your Snap glasses?
I am.
Those are awesome.
Oh yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So how it's recording like in intervals? Is that what it's doing?
So it records at 10 seconds at a time, or you can tap it multiple times to record up to 60 seconds. And that's a way to immerse people into your life. So it's all a part of the immersive whole way of doing things now. All a part of the medium.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
All right, Jate and Jason are coming back. Al, you can stay for this if you want, or if you need to go. We're just going to go through questions here. Okay. And I'll do my best without Jason or Jate, but I think they're coming back. Coco, Cheddars. I don't know. Zach's still here. Feel free to jump. This is just an after party. Anybody can come on, help answer questions. And first one, we got a lot, so let's go through. First one, what, if any, privacy concerns should be acknowledged? What do you guys think about privacy concerns? I've had this question before, and I haven't thought about it recently. There is a lot of anonymity as far as like interaction. Like when you interact with people, they don't necessarily let's say Facebook, they have your Facebook profile. They could probably find out where you live, that type of thing. I don't think you have that in the metaverse from a privacy concern. But if you're talking about like a country where your IP is being monitored, that could be a definitely privacy concern. Do you guys have any thoughts? Anybody have any thoughts about privacy concerns that should be acknowledged?
I mean, I guess I would just start off with a lot of the same things that I guess you would do in person. I mean, you wouldn't want everybody to have access to everybody's email. If you're sending out an email to your whole church, you're going to figure out how to get it so it sends it so that not everybody has everybody's email. You don't send a 150 person list so that it gets to everybody. Like the same thing you do online. Obviously, I think there's some maybe additional concerns, but I think for the most part, I would just it's going to come from your own thinking, right? Like, what would you not want somebody to have access to? Some of it's even like people's names. I have to ask people a lot, like, what do you want me to call you? Do you want me to call you the username you have, or do you want me to use your real name? And if they tell me your real name, okay, is that something I can use in public or not? These are just like additional things people don't really think about, I guess. So the security, I think, is less of an actual security threat as much as it is the security of people to have trust. How much trust will I lose if I share something that I shouldn't have shared? That's where I go with it when I think about the security. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Just a nuance to it all is when you ask to pray for someone, some people want you to pray for them with their physical name, but don't want you to refer to their physical name after you've done praying with them. So I find that interesting that when you ask, would you like prayer? Normally, I start just praying for them based on their username, but sometimes they'll even correct me during the prayer. And so if you feel led, you can ask them ahead of time, hey, would you like me to pray for your physical name?
That's good, man. Let's go to the next one. If you guys can
I
read
would
it.
like to say something
Oh,
real
yeah, go
quick,
for it. Go for
though.
it, Pastor Coco.
It is important to think about, and Keegan said it in the chat. It's like, it depends on your audience and who you're reaching out to, because there are nations and there are people in countries other than the United States that don't have the freedoms that we have. And so there's a completely different security concern that's going to happen there, privacy, everything. And I don't have any expertise in that area because have never done missions in those areas, but it is something to think about depending on who it is that you're trying to reach.
Good stuff. Let's see, from Marcilla, I'm pronouncing that right. My church denomination is highly institutional. I could not start my own congregation the way that someone who is non-denominational or from a denomination that is more congregational in its polity. Having said that, I'm one of the founding members of my congregation stream team and positioned to potentially bring a ministry of virtualization to the congregation that I serve. Running out of space, so what looks like VR small group ministry, virtualizing traditional worship service. So there's a lot there. Maybe we could tackle like the first part, like I guess maybe Jason is best to talk about like institutionally approaching something like this to church leaders. You know what I mean? Yeah. And maybe Coco as well, or whoever. Just what do you guys think about this?
No, that's a great question. In fact, one of the videos I did, so Jeff Reed just talked about the church digital and the first steps to meta ministry video. I did one on how to expose your church, your physical church, to metaverse ministry without imploding your church. So there are some considerations to think about because it is still so new, and probably because it's so weird, there's just a lot of challenges that people bring up. And so your denomination or your church, even if you're not tied to a denomination, there will be challenges. So there's a lot to think about. And I'd love to help you guys with that as well offline. You can definitely contact me. But I think just be patient, go slow. Starting that, I think one of your questions or one of your thoughts was a small group ministry. I think DJ already addressed that. Yeah, just kind of get in there, and you don't have to call it a church. You can just call it a mission, parachurch mission, whatever you want to do, and just start seeing God do great work as he does amongst the lost. And then you'll have these stories that you can share. And those in your congregation that are truly missionally minded, which, hopefully a lot are, then they'll be encouraged by that. And they'll be like, wow, maybe this is worth looking into. So it takes time. It's slow. We didn't just jump out and say, we're planting a new church in the metaverse. That probably would have blown up a lot of my members, maybe some of my traditional members. And so we just took it very slow and just let God work. And now it's very comfortable. Now it's very immersed in our whole culture here. Just takes time. So I don't know if that helps. But the video that I did that goes into much more detail about steps to take, blow by blow, play by play, the way that we did it. You don't have to follow our model, but it did work for us. And so maybe that would be helpful for you in your physical church context.
Beautiful. Love it.
I also wanted to mention it as well. That's where the experimentation discovery comes in. Because depending on the platform, you may have something completely different. I wouldn't say it's a lift and shift of your physical church service into the new platform. You're going to need to get to know the people. You're going to need to talk to the people in the platform, just kind of like if you were going out on the mission field with a physical ministry out in another country. You want to go there. You want to meet the people. You want to learn about them, learn what they're like. What is the world like? Where they are? What are the rules? And what are the laws? You want to respect that world and work within those rules. And so a church on Twitch will look different than a church in VR chat versus VR alt space or versus Final Fantasy. We all look different. Mine looks different. I've learned by experimentation that a sermon isn't going to cut it because attention spans are going to mean they're not going to pay attention. So I had to go something else. So it's all different.
That's good. Question, other than the actual experience of VR, was Second Life a first iteration of the metaverse? My opinion, yes. I was in Second Life, particularly because it was connected to an economy. Really a true metaverse experience is going to be blockchained, which currently like VR chat, alt space, and all those are not. And so I think the economy alone really set Second Life on its own. And I think it was probably the first iteration of the metaverse. So I think so. Let's see, Jate, are you PC only? Are you using a Quest 2 or a PC VR setup? What's your deal, Jate?
Yeah, so I'm PC VR only. I don't have a Quest. I've considered getting one just for the wireless. I don't have it as you can get a wireless dongle to work for that. But yeah, currently I use VR together with index controllers. I got into VR like early. Like I originally tried the Oculus. I tried Oculus One, and I used it at a thing, and that's when I fell in love with it. Like I knew that's what I wanted to move into, at least just trying it. But I ordered when Oculus was going to be releasing their official version 1. I ordered one, but I canceled it because then Vive announced their thing. So I've been in it since whenever that was. So I still have my very first Vive, which has been years at this point. I don't even know how many years, but and then I got upgraded to index controllers. So it's what I use, but I don't think it's necessarily the best. The best changes every year, right? And for the thing is, for the money, for the price, the Quest is just the way to go. Like it's ridiculous. I almost feel cheated because I look at like my device and I'm like, I don't even think it's this high resolution, and I paid $1,000 for this thing, you know. But like that was because I was, you know, it's what happens when you're one of the earlier ones, and now kids are asking for it for Christmas, and I'm like, I would have been out of my mind if I had asked for the certificate. So yeah, it's yeah.
Let's see. Next one. Do you do your world building for AltSpace VR in Unity? So Jate, Cheddars, maybe you want to answer that generically. For VR Church, we use the in-game asset. So AltSpace has in-game things we could use. We have used Unity before, but we didn't do it. We had someone else do it. Cheddars, what about you guys? Cornerstone, what do you guys are up to over there with Unity and world building?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff. With Cornerstone, Pastor Jason was courageous enough back in the day to ask me to try and build his campus, right? And so I, not knowing very little Unity and very little 3D modeling with a computer science background, was able to learn and build that within 250 hours. And so that became the template that then other people could use as DJ Soto was saying, kit objects to then build galleries for specific sermons. And that allowed the audience members to like learn the Bible by making these objects and really solidify the stories and the parables. As far as Unity, there is a lot of potential for because with Unity, if you can bring a 3D model into it correctly, then you can upload it to AltSpace, you can upload it to VR Chat. And that allows you to have custom buildings and custom models for whatever you're doing. There's also in VR Chat the ability to script. So you can have slides, you can have a live stream, and that's what Stuart from the VR Chat Cornerstone campus used. And he needed to spend 100 hours to figure that out. And yes, there's also the potential now in AltSpace VR. There's the potential to do scripting using MREs, mixed reality extensions, that could allow you to do things like possibly spawn communion next to people in the future and allow them to consume it, to possibly allow for baptisms where you could like have the pastor lower an avatar into the water. Stuff like that that could be really useful. Or MREs can be used to see how, and scripts can be used to count like how many people visited, how long they visited for. So there's a lot of potential to Unity development. We just need people who are willing to learn or who are already in that space to really contribute. And also there's a group at the Wiki that's trying to get shared assets going for the platform of AltSpace VR. So check out the Metaverse Ministry Network Wiki when you get a chance.
Awesome. Thank you, Cheddars. All right, let's see here. We got a lot of questions, so let's probably go to 30 seconds each, maybe one person per question. Maybe we'll knock out a few at the same time. We'll just rush and slow down, rush and slow down. I'm thinking that Rec Room might be better for senior citizens then. Thoughts? No, not for senior citizens. That one's answered for that one. Audio quality for music and worship. For us, it's great. We do this, I guess, Cornerstone. I'll just answer for both of us because we use similar, MRE, Ben's MRE. That's great. Sounds great. Love it. I don't know if anybody has any quick thoughts about that, but that was good. Why preserve the sermon and worship service in VR? Does that really work in VR? And so I think we already kind of talked about that. If we need to talk about it more, let me know. Pastor Japo, I think preserving the sermon and worship is a significant characteristic of the influence and impact we've had in VR, is to preserve that in an avatar state. Feel like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Real quick, my understanding of Horizon Worlds is that right now we are limited to 20 people in a room. I think that's true. And we can't import outside assets. I believe that's true as well. Like video or slides. Yeah, I do believe you cannot do that. Have you heard if they are thinking of changing this? I doubt that they would, because I think they're trying to control the experience and protect like young people and screen sharing and what that could lead to. So I don't think Horizon Worlds. I could be wrong, but I don't think they would. Recommendations for VR goggles. Quest 2 is what we're recommending. Ooh, have you purchased any virtual real estate in the sandbox? I have not. I checked it out. It's too expensive. Anybody else?
A lot of these like as they came in, but yeah, I was pretty much saying like we don't have time to talk about NFTs today. Like we're doing. Let's start with one thing, and we'll work our way up to the NFTs.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I have not bought. I have virtual assets. I have NFTs that I've purchased. The Matrix that just came out, they released some NFTs, so I have a bunch of those. But virtual real estate, no, that's in Second Life. Have I had that?
Yep.
And even if we answered these already, I'll just put them up just so I can clear them from the list here. Sure. Non-coder person getting started. How do I build in these platforms? Yeah, that's going to be in the show notes. Cheddar's video about building. That's good. I think I answered this question. Do we have same teams in each Meta app? Yes and no. We have different teams, and then there's a little bit of cross collaboration. So we have different teams for our church plants. Answered. Let's see here. Brandon was asking, what is the relationship between the virtual world and the physical world? Have you navigated that? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Anybody have thoughts on this one?
I think Jopo kind of answered it, how he sees it being between the church, a physical church and a virtual church. I think for me personally, I can just speak to people maybe saying that virtual is not real relationships. I don't think that's necessarily the direction it's going, but just on that end, I have relationships with people that I've played video games with for 9 years online. And 2 years ago, I got to visit Japan. And yeah, no worries, Jason. So yeah, I got to visit Japan, and I actually went with 4 people from my physical church and 4 people that I had only known online that I played video games with. And when we all met up together, they didn't know each other, introduced each other, and we all went and hung out. And it was just like a bunch of my friends that I'd known. And I'll be honest, the people that I knew online, I had a better connection with than the people that I knew in person. And the main reason just comes down to time. Like you can say something about the quality of the communication I can have with people in person. I can go out to eat with them. I can shake their hands. I can give them hugs. These are things I wish I could do to the people in virtual reality, and that's getting better. But just the sheer amount of time that I can spend. If I send a message to a friend and say, hey, do you want to hang out? And the difference is I'm going to have to drive to where they're at, and I'm going to have to make a block of my time, and I'm going to have to say, when do I leave, and so on. You just think about how much you don't get time-wise versus just very quickly being like, do you want to hop on for 30 seconds? We get on, we chat real quick, and then like we can hop off, we can get back on a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. Just it's just faster. I get more time. How do you guys feel like that's the same for you in your online mission, your relationships with people online versus your physical? Maybe that's a direction we could take it.
It's
Yeah.
still community. It's still community, like you said earlier. I mean, whether it's in the metaverse or in the physical, you still are. I mean, you're still building community. I like the metaverse because it's the closest thing to actual presence. I mean, beyond the screen. And that's kind of how I learned to understand VR. VR is about presence, it's about the person. And so when you start to look at it, like that, it's a different experience, but it's quite a bit of presence that you would only
Right.
be able to realize
Yeah.
when you get in the headset.
What's the quality of the interaction? Because you could be physically together and not even talking to each other, distant. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's physical. It's better, maybe, but maybe not. If we only had a Twitch streamer, full-time Twitch streamer for this next question, what's the best way to broadcast your church service? OBS or Twitch or something? D. Riddick was wondering about. Do we? Oh, we do have one. Jake.
Yes, those are not mutually exclusive. Those are both of those things are together. Those are the same thing. So you use OBS to stream to Twitch. So it's not OBS or Twitch. Twitch is the platform you stream on. OBS is the software that you use to stream to it. So yeah, download OBS. It's one of the best free apps. It may be the best free app. It's ridiculous how much you can do in it for free.
Do you think Streamlabs is easier, to use?
So I don't want to get into it, but Streamlabs steals things. Streamlabs is not a good company. They're just not.
Okay.
So I'll end it there. They steal things from other people. There's a whole falling out going on right now. I would say just download OBS Studios. Please don't download Streamlabs.
What would you recommend as the most optimal service time considering time zones around the world? That's a good question. I don't know that we figured that out. So we started VR Church 7 p.m. Eastern. A lot of Europeans were coming. They were saying, "Hey, Pastor, it's like 1 or 2 in the morning, midnight." So then we launched VR Church Europe at 1 p.m. Eastern. So we have 1, 3, 5, 7 Eastern, which has covered a lot, but Asia Pacific is missing out. And we tried to do a 6 a.m. service, but we had a leader that moved on, and so we had to discontinue that 6 a.m. for the Asia Pacific. I don't know that there's an optimal time. JPO, why'd you pick your time for?
Yeah, it just worked for us because I was, and just as to encourage people that are in the physical church just trying to jump. I know what you guys are, one of the quotes I've heard is version 1 is better than version none, right? And so we were like, you know what, we're not going to be able to do a lot of what maybe you guys are doing, what we're doing now, or Cheddar's is doing with building a lot. So I said, you know what, I just want to do exactly the same thing I'm doing right now on Sunday morning to maintain my, you got to watch your bandwidth, right? And so we just did 1 o'clock because my services were done at 12, gave me a little bit of break, jumped in and just repeated the service at 1 o'clock. And it's worked for us. We made some tweaks, but that's why we chose 1, is just because I wanted to be there live, and that's the only time I had available, and I could just
that's awesome.
Didn't have to reinvent the wheel. So just
I love how you wanted to be there live.
Yeah.
And how you just to how to stream it. You're like, no, I got to be there, which kind of leads me for JPO, for you. How have you, or can you integrate this into your in-person services? You did that with baptisms, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
We had a great. Yeah, one of the first times that we actually showed our congregation in real life what's happening in the metaverse. Fortunately, because of the time, the way it works, we had a potluck, and I think we had a business meeting or something after the second service. So it was around, about 1 o'clock when we were doing our church in alt space, and we had the baptism service. DJ, you were there, right there at the front end of the service. So we actually streamed it on our Twitch channel and showed it to the entire congregation at the physical church, and it was so awesome because they heard the testimonies. They saw the baptisms, and people erupted. We actually have a video of it. We can't show it today, but they erupted in applause as they watched these avatars up there on the screen to share their testimony and get baptized. So that was a real pivotal moment in our church, seeing the validity of VR ministry.
I love that integration, dude. I love that. I think that's awesome. Next question is talking about, I guess, virtualizing. Let's say you're doing a building campaign and maybe creating a VR representation of that. Do you have platforms in this area where you might suggest exploration? That's a good question. You're going to need a Unity builder, but Cheddar's, will we do that in Altspace? Let's say a church came to you, Cheddar's, and says, we just want to create a VR experience for people from our church. We have a station set up. They can put on the headset and walk through our building. What platform would be the best for that?
So if you want the most audience, I would say well, it's a tie between VR chat and AltSpace VR. AltSpace VR, it's easier for people who've never experienced VR to get into it and to get to your event. And so that's important. But you can make custom models, you just can't do scripts. Whereas if you're planning to have like doors that open, for example, that's so much easier to do in VR chat where people walk up and the doors auto open. So if you want events and scripts, VR chat for your experience. If you want wider audience of new to VR, go AltSpace VR with your 3D modeling development. Rec Room and Facebook Horizons do not supply custom 3D models outside the application, but both provide their in-app world editors to do that. And then you'll need to contact world builders that do that.
If we only had
I actually have an answer for that too,
okay,
because I've worked in the enterprise for VR, and they do a lot of capital projects, and they use VR as a way to walk through the builds before they actually build anything, saves billions of dollars it already has in the world today. So there are a lot of architecture tools. The tools that they use to do the architecture designs, the CAD, can be exported from CAD into VR. And so there is a port that can do that automatically. And you would just talk to your architect because they may already know about it and see that there are ways to do that. And then you can just walk through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say,
called Matterport. Definitely Google search that. Because they do like what's called photogrammetry, which is take a bunch of photos of a building inside and out and then use that to make a 3D model. And so that might be a quick but possibly expensive way to get into VR with your campus.
Sweet.
With an existing campus, yeah. But if they're building something that's not existent yet, that's different.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Recommendations for creating an avatar to help with UX. Pastor Coco's avatar appearance is different from Cheddar's. I guess because you're in Final Fantasy, right? Is that what they're talking about?
Yeah, that's just a matter of which platform you're on. AltSpace looks different than VR chat, and they all look different because they all have different avatar creator. And when you get in there, the first thing you do is create your avatar, and it'll walk you through that whole thing.
And VR chat is the only one that has like no limits to avatar. I mean, I'm sure there are limits, but I'm talking about like you can just create one and I don't know whatever Blender, Unity. It's amazing. It's fantastic. It's unbelievable, to be honest.
Yeah, it's more technical on the VR chat side. I wouldn't suggest doing it unless you know modeling because you can break things. So.
Next question. Oh, this is a lightweight question right here. We'll answer this in 2 seconds. Let's see here. What are the theological implications of the sacraments within virtual worlds like baptism or communion? Are there any books, resources you could give us to help us dig into the theological implications for the sacraments within virtual worlds? I love the question. And we didn't put that in the webinar because that was a little heavy, I thought. You know, people are just, you saw the poll. We're just exploring right now. It's like most people are exploring. And now we're going to like, talk about sacraments. So long story short, for VR Church, we view them symbolically. I'm sure there's, different, viewpoints about that. But for us, our theological belief is that these sacraments are symbolism. So in the spirit of that symbolism, we will express that in virtual reality, whether it's through the Lord's Supper, interacting with elements, whether it's baptism. And again, it's one of those things going back to the Matrix, you have to experience it because like being underwater in VR, it just feels real. I remember Pastor Lena got baptized, came out of the water, was bawling. She was like, this is just, she never thought that would happen. And the immersive nature of the tech makes you feel like it's happening. So that's us, but we're based in the metaverse. Pastor J-Po, Physical Church, any conversations around that? Well, how did that go with you guys?
Yeah, so a book recommendation, Virtual Reality Church. I think DJ, you're in that book, right? It's Virtual Reality Church by Daryl Bach. I forget the other guy who wrote it, but that would be a recommended book, I think, to get an overview of just some of the theological implications and pragmatic implications for VR ministry. Oh, there it is.
No.
And these guys are they were box at the Dallas Theological Seminary, respected seminary, and the other guy whose name I can't remember, Coco, is at Moody Bible Institute. So that's another respected. So this is becoming more something that we all need to talk about. It really depends on your background and how you view the sacraments. So like DJ, I'm the same with DJ. We come from a memorialist perspective where the sacraments represent, they're not actually the body and blood for us. The water of baptism, even Peter says that it's not about the water so much, the H2O molecules. It's about the symbol of what's happening internally that you must publicly, as long as it's publicly demonstrated where people are there watching and it's visually rendered. So the people involved can actually see the symbol and experience it, which you can do in VR. To us, that constitutes a legitimate practice with the sacraments. I know we've got friends that are in different denominations, different traditions, that they do ministry in the metaverse, but they just won't call it a church, and that's fine. They can't have the ordinances, the sacraments, because of their background and seeing the sacraments as more of a physical thing, like Catholic, Lutheran, stuff like that, and that's fine. So it's one of the comments in the book by Bach. He says the debate around sacraments, VR didn't start the fire, to quote Billy Joel, right? This debate's been going on for a long, long time about how the sacraments should go down in a church. So I think it just gets a little accelerated because it's so strange to our eye. Metaverse is so new, but the debate's been going on for a long time. So wherever you fall on that, I think you just don't violate your conscience. And we haven't had too many issues. People haven't hit us too hard. I guess just to say, DJ, we all get hit.
Yeah. When we first did it, I was like, oh, nobody's, we're like back particularly 2-3 years ago when we first did it. We're a real small church. Nobody was talking about us. And then I don't know how it got wind, and you just saw articles started popping about virtual reality baptism. And that created a little bit of a firestorm. And I remember we got a lot of reaction negatively towards us, and our leaders are like, oh, we need to respond. I was like, no, let's just keep just doing our thing. We can't respond to every person that's upset that we baptized somebody with severe social anxiety that's now celebrating this. I don't have to for us in our community. It's just beautiful.
I have one thing you could do though, if you're against the whole virtual aspect of it, digital food. You can just, if you know in advance what you're doing as far as community goes, just tell them, get your bread and your wine at home. That's what we do for online church. Yeah. Just do the same thing for virtual.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to show so people can see it, the objects that we've been using at Cornerstone VR Church, and then we can make them interactable in AltSpace so you can pick them up, and they become smaller when you pick them up. And then at the moment, there's no way to consume objects in AltSpace, but they drop through the floor as soon as you drop it. So we bring it to the mouth, drop, and that's consuming of the bread, and then we can pick up the wine and drink and drop. Cool. So
that's amazing. Yeah, VR chat has some consuming elements that we messed around with, but yeah, I love that you brought that out. I'm a worship pastor. I'm very curious what worship outside of teaching looks like in these spaces. So for us, the way we do worship is Life Church has their open resources. So the royalty-free worship music that we use from them to broadcast into our services. So it's like lyrical videos. We've done some live music, like someone has played the guitar and sang a special music. So that's been a live element that wasn't lyrical video based. We haven't done choirs. Latency was going to make that a haunted chorus, right? Or even singing in the congregation is tough. We hear people singing, but you can tell it's off sync or whatever. So I think that's the thing that's developing. I don't know for Cornerstone how you guys do worship, but
we unmute. Yeah, we unmute, and I think it's beautiful. It's kind of a strange kind of beauty, a joyful noise.
Yeah, joyful noise.
Yeah.
Let's see here. To your knowledge, are there any digital world churches doing concerted work alongside workers among the unreached to reach people living in the majority world? Or is this all so new that that's still in the future? At least from my perspective, it's still in the future. So I have some relationships, connections, conversations, let's say in the Middle East, we'll keep it very generic. And Yeah, I think they're just in the exploring phase. I don't think they're into experimenting or establishing anything, but I think they're very interested. Security is really a huge part of that, trying to figure out how to connect the virtual world in an IP tracking anonymous way. I don't know that exists, maybe VPNs, but
I know there's isn't there like secret libraries like in Minecraft for a lot of persecuted church members in countries because they can't, obviously like places that crack down on your online experience, but when you bury it inside of a MMO like Minecraft or something, there's a lot that can be done. I don't know. Have you heard about that? Maybe I'm just throwing some secret libraries. Is that familiar, DJ? Or
I haven't heard of it, but I know
resources
if anybody-
that people can get. Yeah. So I don't know. The persecuted church could really utilize a lot of these platforms that are going to be outside the control, perhaps, or the site of some of these persecuted places.
And I find that it's probably being done. Like in the conversations I have, they just can't talk about it, right? So, how do you join VR Church?
Sorry,
Volunteer team?
Keegan's
Yeah,
speaking on it just in chat, and he's like,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
experimental. Yeah, we use Minecraft to share resources. So, yeah,
Wow.
definitely a thing. I would also say, like, you are a resource. And so, if you can reach those people, they can't really block the communication you have with those people. So, I mean, I spent a lot of time, like I said, in with Japanese people who have the access to it if they want it, but they just don't want it. Like it's a 1% to 2% Christianity rate. So yeah, Japan doesn't really have it right now. But I also know people that I've met while looking for Japanese people. I've met a lot of Chinese people, and it's a little bit more difficult there. And so I'm very much in like the Asian side of things, but I've been able to reach out to people that otherwise would not have that ability. So
I like what you said. You're the resource.
Yeah.
That is so, I mean, that's just key. That's why we're all here. You're the resource. I like that.
Just real quick, like China actually has even laws now. If you're under the age of 18, you're only allowed 1 hour of video games a day. Like there's laws that are very, very strict. And I don't think most of Americans realize how strict some of these laws are. So yeah.
Yeah, that's weird.
All right, I'll go through some of these quick and stop where we feel like you need to stop. So just flag me down. How do you join VR Church volunteer team? For us, through Discord, we have a ticketing system. You just click the ticket. Let's see. Do you think tithing in crypto will be the way of the future in church? Yes, we accept.
DJ?
We accept.
What do you think about that one, DJ?
I'm a crypto. Yeah. We accept crypto. JPO, you guys do as well, right?
How's your Dogecoin doing?
Doge is low. Talk to me
I
about
shifted
that.
half mine to ETH. Yeah, after NFTs hit.
This is actually a great question. How long do you recommend a service before folks start getting dizzy in VR? At one point, we saw a statistic that said about 35 to 45 minutes. I don't know what the latest is, where people start to feel like, I need a break. Like some of us advanced users can be in there for hours. Like I know Jade's laughing. Like I'm in there for 4 hours. You know what I mean? I think for new people, like 45 minutes. So we tend to go an hour, but I think we have a hard time getting it down to 45. But yeah, that's for us.
I have fallen asleep in VR multiple times. We'll leave it at that.
Who's next?
I'm easy.
I think we kind of talked about this a little bit. How to respond to those who say the Bible tells us to gather physically and cannot gather as a church in VR long term. Does anybody have any more to add to this? We can take a pause here for this one, because this one I see a lot.
Yeah, that one's
And
a lot,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to community. For me, when you talk about gathering physically or gathering in VR, if you kind of just keep researching and going deeper and deeper in that, it's this sense of community that's being talked about and that type of fellowship. So I think just as things evolve, it's like, can we find cell phone in the Bible? I mean, I don't know, and different things that have emerged. But I really feel like if you look at it from the very core of what's being spoken, it'll speak to you about what was really meant. I just see it as community and being available, like I heard someone say, on all devices, having your message be able to just cross on various platforms to reach the people who are waiting on you. but that's my view
Yeah.
on that.
I think it's a
Yeah.
tough one because go Jay or Jason.
Oh no, well, I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with what you just said, and I think it's just trying to find that. I think there's a middle ground that we can try to find. Because I mean, obviously, I think what's being pushed back against is God did design us with, we got flesh and blood here, and so there is something very powerful about a physical hug. Seeing somebody like in person, that is powerful. And so I don't think VR ministry, but it's not saying that VR ministry is saying that's not good. That is the ultimate, but there are a lot of contexts in which something maybe that isn't as ultimate is still pretty awesome and valuable because you're touching souls, you're encouraged, because we're still blessing. I'm blessed and encouraged by the friendships that I have in the VR church because we're able to communicate. We're talking. I mean, that's powerful. The power of the word to build each other up in truth, speaking the truth in love, all that stuff. We pray for each other. Yeah, but is it even better to be able to be in person? Yeah, that is true. And so I think trying to find that middle ground where we're at is experimenting with how to help people. My philosophy, and I don't know if this is shared by anybody, it doesn't matter. We're all in this experiment together, is trying to go out to where they are, because it's not stopping. The metaverse isn't stopping. People are not going to come to your physical. A lot of people are not going to come to your physical church. We've been told that many times by people that have come to our VR church and gotten saved and discipled. They said we would have never gone to. So we got to go to them. But my goal is try to show them the beauty of the bride of Christ, because they got so many kind of memeified views of what the church is, and they just don't want to go to the physical church. But if they can pop into the metaverse, they start connecting and they feel this vitality and the love and the fellowship. Then they might be like, you know what? Maybe I will try a church in my local town, and then we can help guide them and find a good, healthy church. And so I feel like it's just a process of discipleship and using a great tool like the metaverse to just keep helping people take a next step with Jesus. And some people are going to stay in the metaverse for various reasons, like Alina can't go. So we have to reach people in the unreached countries. They can't go to a physical church. So we've got to be there for them. But other people we can help go to that next level so they can go and get a physical hug on a Sunday morning when they're going through. So I think it's just a both and. That's the way I look at it. People get really worked up.
Real quick story. There was this guy named Christian who, 22 years old, falling away from the faith, joined us in the prayer groups for a long time, and then on Valentine's Day of 2021, he got baptized in the physical church, then got super connected to the physical church, and then got a girlfriend, and then the two of them pursued God together. And now although he's in alt space anymore because he's too busy with his girlfriend and his church, he is very much connected and now back serving Christ. So
that's awesome.
Yep, I can say the exact same thing. We have a guy named Zilly who is joined, was very anxious, never had any friends, and so that kept him from meeting people in person. And so he joined off of somebody else's request to play a game that he had bought that didn't realize it was a multiplayer game. So he started playing games with us. That got him out of his comfort zone a little bit, enough that he was able to talk to some real life people who play D&D. That person invited him to their physical church, and then he went to the church and he was baptized after about 1.5 years of going to our Bible discussions online. So we're not trying to keep people out of the physical or anything like that.
Right.
But
it's not anti-physical.
But I would say on the same hand, my own roommate and I, who we lived in the same house, we were online most of the time we communicated. And the reason's just because it was easier for us to play video games online and just to talk with the headset. And it just really didn't seem like it was that big of a disconnect. It's nice when we're in person, we can share things we can't do otherwise, but there's just some stuff that's easier. And the amount of time I can spend with somebody online is just so much more important to me than the missing out of being able to feel somebody's heat or like hug somebody or whatever, these small things compared to the amount of time. So
I do want to say one thing, though, that there are a lot of people that say there's nothing better than in person, but I do want to mention that is coming from a single point of view. There are many people out there with mental health disorders who have a very hard time being in person with other people. So expecting them to go in person is not realistic, and you have a very small perspective. So VR has been proven to be a very helpful for people with autism as a way.
Yeah, I was just about to tell you a story about that. But, it was Gal Yeah, Gal came to VR Church, and she has, I don't know the correct term, but this like on the spectrum of autism, but she's able to control her experience. So she's able to like back up when she needs to go to a corner if she has to, just the open world just allows her to navigate, where if she was in a pew, I mean, there's like no escape, right? There's that claustrophobic feeling. And so I think that's unique to VR for sure.
So good. So good.
Let's see. What are some thoughts on best practices for gatekeeping? Say you have youth ministry and Metaverse. What would be best practices for keeping out creepy adults or keeping it for actual teenagers? Absolutely. That's like on that experimentation, explore experiment stage, where you learn how to do private rooms, invite only rooms, friends only rooms, all that type of stuff. You definitely want to start there. Unless you're doing like a Metaverse ministry where you're opening up to the world, where that's a little bit different. But for on this side of things, you definitely want to manage that, keep that under control. Let's see here. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, yep. So we talked about this one, right? Yeah, from Janet. Baptisms, communion. Gave some resources on that. I'm not sure if I understand this question. And knowing how going VR changes the need for certain components from regular face-to-face church. How will this alter church patterns forever? Does anybody understand what they're asking there?
So it's wondering if when we're in there, is this just changing, I guess,
is the method.
Like, are we being changed where we, can't kind of experience regular church in the same way? For me,
okay. I see
it enhances it for me. Like, yeah. I know when I went to VR Church, what was it, 2 Sundays ago, and we could go through, like, you're like, why don't we just come through and feel what it's like when you go through the fire and, God's there to love you on the other side. Like, it's more of an enhancement in a positive way for me. I don't know.
Well, churches, think about history. I mean, there's so many methods that have, it used to be the house church, then it obviously crystallized into sort of a formalized, we're sitting in pews looking at some priest up at the front, after the 400s or 500s AD. And that changed, that methodology changed the way that we experience church in a much more, and that probably heightened the consumeristic thing, right? You were just kind of coming to get consumer goods, religious goods, consumables, because that's how it's modeled. But before, it was sitting around a table, Paul's talking till the wee hours of the night as they're eating, sushi or whatever. I don't know what they eat, but it's the method. So it is going to change. It is going to change, but I don't think it necessarily has to mean bad, just because something. Yeah, there will be negatives. There will be, and we don't know what those are yet. And we're going to try to stay close to Scripture and make sure that we don't change the message or the mission. But the methods always change throughout history. So this is just the same thing. History repeats itself. And so I think we just don't need to be afraid. Don't need to be afraid of change as long as we stay to the mission and the message. So.
And it will cause you to want to experience more. I'll say that. So now, someone may be just speaking in a normal physical setup, but you'll be thinking, if you've been in VR, I wonder what it would be like to be on Noah's Ark. It just kind of expands what you kind of would be capable of experiencing as it relates to the word.
Corey says, what platform is the best for hosting external videos? AltSpace VR is definitely the one. I don't think other ones do really well. Heather was asking about singing in the metaverse and lag. I think we talked about that a little bit, how there is that, but there's something kind of beautiful to that if you're like playing a worship song and people are singing to it. So is it better to reproduce? So Eric, this is a great question. We touched a little bit on the webinar. Is it better to reproduce and stream IRL video to the metaverse or do the service as avatars? Big believer personally, avatar preaching. I think it's a great start to stream. That's a great start. You should totally do that 100%. But then you also need to be thinking of creating an immersive experience with a live avatar. Yeah. I think that's the direction you should go in. What platform is Life Church in? They are in AltSpace VR, and I haven't been to one of their services yet. I'll have to get over there. Have you reached folks who are not already affiliated with the church? 100%. Like Unbelievable.
Me?
I'm not gonna say anything. What do you guys give me stories?
At
Oh,
least
not
people
already
friend-
Always crazy.
affiliated. I am affiliated. I changed that answer. Yeah.
There's so many stories. I don't know if you want to DJ share. I mean, it's kind of a cool story about, we won't use her name, but just the person who all of us connected
Mhm.
with, and how she grew up in a home in a multiple generations that had no connection to the church. And in fact, there were, Wiccans and New Age and some others. And she identified as a Satanist coming in, and she's connected with all of us. It's been really cool. She's such a great friend to all of us. So she had no connection to church. In fact, she said, I came to church to troll, just to kind of give you guys a hard time. And we just became close friends with her. We loved on her, and she's just a sweetheart. And she came to Christ. And so there's so many stories like that. That's one of my favorites.
I love
and
that
DJ and Jay
Yeah.
know her really well. So
Yeah. Beautiful story.
I would say
Um,
half of my ministry. I feel like if my ministry ever is not half of that, then I'm probably doing something wrong. So just for me personally, that's a number I look at. I've changed how I do the ministry specifically because it was becoming too Christian. It was just becoming a Christian hangout. I really don't want that. There's other places for that, and I don't want to be that. And so that's why I say I'm not even sure what is or isn't church at this point versus what is mission, because for me it's just the mission is just too important. And if I have to whatever I have to do to make sure that I'm reaching lost people, that's what I do. And if that makes me more church or it makes me more mission, that's what I'm going to do. But just for me personally, it is at least half, and it will always be. It needs to be for me.
So Broderick, how we do music is through like lyrical worship songs that we take from YouTube, upload it to slides.com, and then have a slide. It's called an MRE, Ben's MRE. And so it's Altspace is the best way to do that for that. We talked about budget. We did kind of rush through it. JPO, did you have any other thoughts other than what was said? Or we can just direct people to that point of the webinar.
Yeah, I don't think we need to probably. It's cheap.
it's cheap.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculously cheap.
If we are, Marcella says, if we're connected to an established church and discerning how the Lord may be calling us to augment the mission of the church, on what question should we pray? Should we be praying? And discerning how, what question should we be praying? I think for me, you guys can, come chime in. I think for me, it's fundamentally viewing an online member, a virtual member, is no different than the physical attendee. Like they're exactly the same. One's not better than the other. And so to pray for your leadership and your congregation to buy into that, I think is going to be breakthrough for your ministry, leading into Web3, leading into the future. And I know it's tough because the physical attendee is more important, right? Or has a higher value. But once you get to that point, I think there's breakthrough for you. See,
And that the
unmarked
pastors would
that.
have the heart and be open to it, and not see it as a competition, but as an expansion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So tithing for us is done offline. So we just said, hey, we have giving on our website. They're not connected to the blockchain. I think in the future you will have like in world experiences where you can give, through your crypto or however that works. But that's not integrated at the moment. I think you did the same thing, right, JPO?
Yeah. I was just thinking we should have Cheddar's. We should have Cheddar's design an MRE or something, an artifact that is like a tithing plate that just passes before each person, and it stays there and it won't leave until they.
Yeah.
And what's terrifying is you can have objects that are only seeable by certain people. So you can have like an tithing or tithing plate follow the person, and no one else will realize that person is being bothered by this tithing plate the whole time.
Oh my
That's
God.
Hey, DJ.
Yeah.
Christy was here earlier. Is she still here?
Yes, we can only have 6 on stage. El Michelle, do you mind bouncing out for a minute?
See you later. Thank y'all.
Wait,
Thanks.
well, I guess everyone's been. Yeah, Christy, if you can come on stage, invite to on stage. While she's doing that, so if I don't understand the gaming world, is this not for me? I'm a pioneer minister with the Church of England. My role is to explore fresh expressions of faith and doing church. I bought an Oculus and could see the possibility. That's why I'm here. So, man, early VR church was mostly over 40-year-olds who weren't gamers. They just had expendable income. They were curious about social VR. That was what our early church looked like. As a matter of fact, our leadership was all over 40. So, but they weren't gamers. So there's this misconception that VR church is like millennial gamers. Certainly have that. But especially early on, it's kind of like evened out, but especially early on, it was like over 40 non-gamers. So social VR, virtual reality is for everyone. And you don't have to be a gamer to be a part of that. And
the average age of a gamer is 35 for anybody that thinks it's 12. It's 35. True. Yeah. So.
Oh man, I'm so excited. Christy is here. Christy is a board member for VR Church. Hey, Christy, good to see you. I don't know if your mic's working or not, but give it a try.
Hey,
oh, hey, it's working. Nice. Christy, I would love for you to tell everyone about your prayer. Was it a prayer walk? That story when Oculus was on campus. You mind sharing that story with everyone?
Sure. Yeah. So good to be here with y'all, by the way. Love everything that everyone's been sharing. I am like stirred, you guys. Like, I'm like, oh my goodness, God is so good and is moving across the earth. And I'm excited. So yeah, the quick version of this testimony is I was working inside of Facebook headquarters and we just had a very small prayer team. It was like 3 to 5 of us that met every week. There are Christians who work inside of Facebook. God is doing a beautiful work there. And we just began praying in really big faith in our very big God. And we, threw up prayers that God would use Facebook to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. We prayed for Instagram to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. We prayed for WhatsApp to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. And then, I threw up this big prayer that you guys, I had like this much faith for. I could see God, how he was going to use it. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, those were obvious in my mind, my finite, tiny brain at the time, right? This is like, I think 4 years ago now, DJ. I'm trying to remember when we met. But I threw out, okay, God used Oculus to take the love of Jesus to the ends of the earth. And honestly, you guys, I literally had a mustard-sized seed of faith. But when I got to meet DJ and Carrie just a few months later after that prayer, God began to unveil just this broader storyline of his heart for the nations and his heart for innovation and technology and his heart for the people that are this beautiful set of people that love adopting innovation and love adopting new technology like virtual reality. Like there's a certain type of person that is prone to new innovations and technology, and I can't help but believe they are God's sons and daughters because God is the best creator of the whole universe. He is our creator God. He is the greatest innovator that ever existed. And so I happen to think like the harvest is plentiful. Yes, that's true. And like the harvest in virtual reality, you guys, the nation's inheritance is to create and is to innovate. And so what better way to reach God's children, the ones that God is going to put his hand on, especially in this hour. Everyone, we're all too aware that the world needs Jesus and the world needs light instead of darkness. And so what better way than for God to partner with his children who are already adopting technology at a faster rate? They are the early adopters of our generation. And I believe there's especially an important work that needs to be done. And my prayer is that the church would have eyes to see it, right? And that we would come alongside what God's already doing, right? Like what I love about DJ and Carrie's story, they stepped into a story. God was already at work in this, in this area or this harvest field. But they stepped in and they said, yes, they said, God, we want to partner with what you're already doing, even if it doesn't make sense to our finite human brains, even if it doesn't, fit in the boxes that we've put God in. We say yes to God's heart for the nations, and we're excited to partner with that. And it's been a hard journey. It has not been an easy one to pioneer in this space because the enemy wants nothing to do with the love of Jesus going across the metaverse. And yet they've continued in their yes. They have continued to say, yes, we believe in your heart for your children, and we believe in the inheritance of sons and daughters to create and innovate and invent. And I believe there's just such a huge opportunity for churches. I mean, I'm an evangelist at heart. I think virtual reality is like an evangelist Disneyland, because there are people who are hungry, and there's just, not that many things going on yet. And so I'm like, wow, let's go for it. The nations are here. We get to interact with them. They are very, they're very honest. I think, as our brother talked about, right? Like, they're very eager to share, like, hey, here's where I'm struggling, right? Unlike in person, maybe where we might hide that for years, people are very open with, hey, this is where I'm struggling. I really need help. And VR Church is so uniquely positioned to be able to meet those needs, like we saw in Luke 10, where Jesus sends out the 72, heal the sick, right? Cast out demons. Like, it was very real. They are meeting needs. And I believe VR Church is doing that. And so I'm grateful to just see how the Lord is partnering with you all.
Yes, I love it, Christy. And Christy is one of those behind the scenes, like one of the reasons VR Church even exists. There's many, and Christy is one of those cogs in the wheels where she really just been such a help to Carrie and I over the years. And God's really used her in powerful ways in our lives. And so thank you so much, Christy. Really love you. And that's encouraging. If you guys are not fired up after that, man, let's go. Yeah. Let's launch some stuff. You know what I mean?
I love you guys.
All right, friends, I'm going to just bust through. You guys, I kept you guys long enough. You guys feel free to go. Don't feel bad if you got to bail. I'm just going to bust through some of these answers. If you stay, you can help me out, but I don't want anybody to feel like it's always been a couple hours here. I know you guys are busy, but feel free to head out if you need to go. That's no problem, but I'm just going to keep, yeah. Are you doing multiple services each platform? Yeah, we have services in VR Chat, Altspace. We don't have one in Rec Room. Are you doing Rec Room right now, JPO, or no?
We do have a rec room. We're actually right now it's just sort of real loose. It's not a service yet. It's just a loose kind of getting together. But we're Pastor Goose is our Metaverse pastor, and he I love his name. But he's going to be launching that here. I think in a few weeks. So we'll actually have more of a service.
That's cool.
Yeah, in rec room. It's a beautiful church that the lady I talked about, who we all know that came to Christ. She built it. It is. I think you guys have both seen it. It's so beautiful. She's an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are having our offices moved to Rec Room. So we've had our offices in Altspace. We used one called Verbella. We were trying to use Horizon Workspace, which is great. But for us, the accessibility of Rec Room from all devices, we're going to go put our offices there. So we don't have an experience there yet, but we're creating our office, and then that'll probably lead to something in the future. What are your block mute rules you go by? That's a good question. In our experience, we try to hang with trolls as much as possible. We try not to block and mute immediately. We try to what we find oftentimes is trolls will react at first, and then you just say, hey, may I see you? And then they calm down. Like, some people just need that initial attention. But some people are obstinate and they just won't stop, and they just get booted from the experience, unfortunately.
You ever had somebody come up and try to pick your nose on stage, DJ?
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah.
We love those.
There's some good trolls, man.
There's some good ones. There's some good ones, some funny ones.
There's some all that tend to be the same. People coming in F-bombing and thinking that's like really funny, but we've seen that a zillion times. There's some really good ones though. They're really creative. How do I find churches in VR? In Altspace, you should look on the Sunday calendar of events. You'll see a lot there you can check out. We talked about communion. Cheddar's talked about that a little bit. If you saw that a bit ago, he spawned some bread and juice or wine there. So that can be done in VR. Pam, I saw her ask us in the chat about intercessory prayer ministry, and Cheddar's talked about the prayer world. We have a prayer world as well that people can, it was like a guided path, scripture, prayer prompts, that type of thing.
Yep. I also, just real quick on that, that's my favorite thing to do on stream. That's like, I would say the majority of the bulk of my everyday ministry is prayer. For me, I'm live streaming, I'm playing video games. It's not like this is an exclusive church thing to the average viewer, just another streamer. And so when they come in for that, my first thing that I have found is I can pray for anybody. And some people think of it like good vibes. They'll say well, I don't really believe in prayer, but I'll accept the vibes. And, I just kind of have to, I just roll with it. And it's like, okay, but through that experience of continuing to pray for people, I just trust God in that. And I would say that's my the easiest gateway that I've seen for actually reaching people has been, I'm showing you, I say often, I believe there's a God that loves you, cares for you, wants the very best for you, and I do too. And the best way I know how to show that's to pray for you. So I'm going to pray for you every day. It's something I do as a regular event. And people respond to that. And it's the easiest way also for me to show that I mean what I'm saying. It's not just something that's like, oh, I'm a Christian. It's like, no, I'm taking time out of my game. I'll press pause to pray for you. And so it's just something that for me it's really high. It's really high importance. But anyway, yeah,
it's powerful. Yeah,
put it on there.
Very powerful. I've been part of your streams when you're praying in VR chat. That's powerful as well. I meant to mention this earlier. I forgot what the question was. Maybe it was avatar preaching. By the way, I love all my churches. So I know all my community from all the different church plants are here. And one's, it's kind of like, I don't have a favorite child, but man, you know what I really loved was like going to church of Final Fantasy. It's just so chill. Like we go to our free company house. We're just relaxing. There's music playing. Coco's giving her message, man. And there's this, I don't know, it just represents like ministry that's unhinged. There's just a unlimited possibility for it. And so all of them are just so unique and they're so interesting. And I'm kind of getting up on a side trail, but anybody know about this question? Because I don't. We use Life Church's open resources to stream worship music, so we don't have to worry about copyright. But isn't there like, do physical churches buy licenses to broadcast stuff? Is that, what's that thing called? No,
CCLI.
CCLI.
There's a video one too that we use, and that covers you.
That covers you? Yeah, good. They need a avatar wording on that one for their CCLI. Is OBS good? Any streamers can, what do you think, Jake?
Yeah, it's the only choice.
Yep, it's the only choice.
Yes, it's really good. It's the only choice. You should use anything else. Use OBS.
And this one's for you too. We already streamed to Zoom and Facebook Live, and wonder if we can auto stream to a metaverse.
Yeah, I already answered that one, and was pretty much like, no. Think of it more like, don't think of it like another platform to stream to. Think of it like starting another campus. It's more like starting another campus. We already talked a little bit about that. How you shouldn't just have a video on the screen or whatever. It's better to have it with avatars. But even if it was a video on the screen, you'd still need to have a pastor that was introducing the video, talking to people, praying for people afterwards. It's not just, some people think of it like, well, I'll just live stream to YouTube, Twitch, Vimeo. Like I'll just hit all the things. This isn't one of those. This is starting something different. So it's not just click a button.
At a technical level, they could though, right? Like maybe not relational, but if they're pushing, they're multi-streaming. Can they push to like a YouTube Live on Altspace?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I guess you could do that. But their thing is like, but you have to have a room for the Altspace for them to be there. And I guess it's not just when you're doing restream, there's not going to be an option that says Altspace, like restream it to Altspace. Is my point. They're saying like, they think they can just add it as another thing. I'm like, no, it's something else than that. And I would also say you shouldn't want to do that because the goal is to reach people that are in VR that you otherwise wouldn't reach. And so you're going to want to be there reaching those people. So yeah, it's just a little different. That's all.
Yeah, Marcella, you're asking about does this lend itself to worship? People can't receive Eucharist, and so we talked about just the, how like we view it, like me and Pastor Jason as a matter of symbolism. So and like I really like what you said, JPO. Like if your conviction going into this is like we shouldn't be doing like the Lord's Supper, baptism, then follow that conviction. That's important. But there are those of us that would say, yeah, this is worship, virtual baptisms, virtual communion, all of that stuff. Let's see, virtual serious question. So where are we beginning? Let's see here. Where are we beginning with when we are inviting people to virtual Bible study group? Yeah, I think it's a great first step. Small groups for sure. So we talked about music. CCLI is covering that. Pastor Coco, did you put your YouTube channel in the show notes?
Yeah, it's in there.
All right, perfect.
And
Thanks.
People keep asking about the video. Can you say how that's going to be shared out?
I think when I click end on the webinar, which we'll do here in like hopefully 5 minutes or so, I think it pushes it out to everybody in email with the link to watch the video, I believe. So it's supposed to happen. How much time is spent in managing a church in the metaverse? It's full time for us. We have multiple people working on it full time, not necessarily funded full time, but Pastor Lena puts full time hours. I put full time hours. Somebody asked me that recently. I haven't broken it down, but there's definitely hundreds of hours each week across different people spread out. So but it started,
just like pastoring a physical church. You have people that you need pastoring, and
Right.
time investment, emotional investment, all of that is the same.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see who is next. Metrics. This is interesting. Metrics for how many people came to an event, how long they stay. We were thinking initially in Altspace VR. So metrics is interesting because Pastor JP, you and I were talking about how the Altspace metrics sometimes seems a little like larger than they're actually when you used your eyeballs in the event to look and see people. So I guess for us, man, that's a good question. For our Altspace church, we could probably see up to, let's say, 100 across the couple of services. VR chat could run up to 30. Rust is low. It can be high. Final Fantasy is kind of evolving as well. So there could be up to a couple of hundred for our live services when you put it all together. But I don't know, JPO, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah. Also, so for us, about Altspace, we're probably about 40, and VR chat, we're probably about 50 or 60. So we're probably under 100. And I want to encourage people, like, people might think, well, there's billions of people. I guess, what did Meta say? There's a billion people in VR. I don't know if they said that or Metaverse, but don't expect that it's going to be a mega church. I'm not even sure that's what the people in the Metaverse want. They want more community than just this big production. So, and sometimes there's limiters on the spaces itself. You can only fit so many people just technologically. But just, it's not going to be, I wouldn't, God can do anything, of course, but it's not going to be like this huge where you've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, thousands of people. It may eventually grow to that, but just be encouraged that even just ministering to one person is awesome. Like that's awesome. And so, I saw some, the numbers are kind of wonky. You see posts, you're like, we had 300 people. And I'm like, well, not in Altspace.
Right. Yeah. And I come from megachurch world where there's a pressure to maybe a subconscious pressure to have numbers. We had so many attendees, so many salvations, so many baptisms. And I don't know, I understand, like, if you're a church and you're launching a metaverse campus, that you want to report like massive success. But like JPO said, you're at the beginning of an emerging technology and an emerging community. So you could have massive numbers, or it could just be a handful of people. And I think that goes back to the motivation. Pastor Coke and I were talking about this week, the motivation of getting into the metaverse and what that's like. So, for example, if I had an annual report the first year of VR Church, it'd have been like 10 people attended, like 0 salvation, 0 baptism, 0 whatever. Like that was like the first annual report. And I think that, if you're going in with the numbers mindset, which is not necessarily bad, it's just if that's how you have to do it, you have to maybe expectations, thinking about going in like that.
Level set.
But I will say this: how long they stay. Let's say you had 10 people at your service. I feel like, and somebody needs to figure this out, I feel like that's like 1,000 views on Facebook. Like people come in, let's say you had 1,000 views, like we had 1,000 views on our Facebook video, but they stayed for 4 minutes, but you had 10 people stay for an hour. I feel like that metric does not equal. So if you go back to your church leadership, said we had 1,000 in Facebook video when we only had 10 in VR, no, they're probably the same quality wise. And so that needs to be a thing that emerges in this Web3. Let's see here.
Which is weird too. Because I don't know how to look at my things, because it's like, well, I spend a lot of time with people throughout the week, and then I have the stuff is more fluctuating. Like I don't have a sermon that I'm writing or whatever, but I do a Bible discussion every week where we play a game while going through the Bible, and we'll spend usually 3 to 4 hours going through a chapter of the Bible on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like and there's a lot of people there for that, and a lot of people in and out. So when I think about the views thing, yeah, I mean, I could. My views are crazy. Like, I'm definitely destroying probably every major church in views as far as like weekly views, but they're maybe not the same metrics as far as like, whatever. So
yeah, it's tough. When you're trying to convince church leaders and have that success and these numbers, and it's a tough thing to separate from.
But it's encouraging, DJ and Jane, all of you guys. In the physical church, we do have people that come that are unchurched, and we're thankful for that. But the ratios are different. So, like yes, there's maybe less people at our VR churches than at our physical church, but the concentration of unchurched that are just trying out church for the first time is so much different. So it's less numbers, but the numbers are like these, like Jade said, 50% or more. It's different than the physical church that where people are already maybe they're migrating from another church, they're already churched, or they're being rechurched after being dechurched, which is great too. But they're still in the genre of experiencing church life. In the metaverse, it's so different. Like so many unchurched. That's the key. So we just got to not lose heart, even if you don't have thousands at your church. I just want to make sure that's clear. But
yeah, exactly. It's really good. I'd love to watch some women who are out there as avatar preachers. Can you recommend some? Yes, Pastor Coco. You definitely need to follow her on her Final Fantasy sermons and her deliveries. So that's the only one that I know of. There could be others.
Pastor Alina.
Alina.
Oh, Pastor Alina. Yes. Yep. And so, yeah, Pastor Alina, Pastor Coco, for sure. Sorry, Pastor Alina. We know you're heavily integrated with us. And so let's see what this one is. Is there a hub where all VR church services can be found? Kind of like the events page from earlier, but exclusively church. I don't think so. Is there? Anybody?
Not that we've started.
Like in Altspace.
The metaverse. What about the thing that
Cheddar's,
Cheddar's put together? Yeah.
Yeah, so I have the Metaverse Ministry .net website, and there's a churches category, and I have like 15 VR churches there.
Oh,
That's
beautiful.
right.
Oh, that's awesome. I was thinking more like in the Altspace side, but yes, the
Right,
Metaverse
that's what I was thinking too.
wiki, 100%. And that'll be in the show notes.
Oh, and DJ too, like if you're, in the ministry and you're leading a church or a church group or whatever you're doing, mission, we have I think maybe you already mentioned, we have the Discord channel that we'd love to invite you to if you're doing that. It's really just for the leaders that are Metaverse. What is it called, the DJ that you have? Metaverse.
Metaverse Ministry Network.
Yeah, so that's another encouraging thing for people that are needing support. So
yeah, especially if you're ready to launch. Yeah, definitely DM me. I don't think it's really, if you're exploring and you're just kind of checking things out, it might not be for you. But if you're ready to launch, definitely send me an email.
Different crowd.
DM me.
The 27.
Yeah. Yeah, 27%. Unreached people groups are usually in hard to reach areas with not a lot of money. Do they have the resources to buy the equipment they need to join the metaverse? I think we might have touched on this earlier, or a similar question, that it's an emerging thing. Like everyone has a smartphone now, even in like third world countries, it's like, smartphone driven. So I think it's only a matter of time before form and function gets accessible. How do you officially join VR Church? I think it's, join our Discord, get connected with our leaders, attend an event, talk with JPO, talk with me. That's a good way to do that.
Tithe.
Tithe. we need some money.
After party.
Can you speak to custom avatar skins? Y'all can chime in on that. Actually, Coco, can you add Ready Player Me to the show notes? And what's the other one? Taffy or Taffy? Taffy and Ready Player One to the show notes. Those are avatar creators. Cheddar's, or Jade. You make your own, Jade, don't you?
I have, but it's difficult. Even with like a background in 3D, it's difficult. It definitely does take time. Like you can learn it, absolutely. But I would also say, there's people that do it and it's their full thing. They enjoy doing it. And so you can absolutely hire somebody who would love to accept money for them to make you one. Or if you're in, again, VR chat, it's my favorite. And there's literally thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of avatars that are just free public. You can go pick one. Worlds that are, it's like Walmart. You just walk down lines and lines and lines of avatars, and you just find one that
Yeah,
you kind of relate with and wear
Any
that
topic.
for a while, and then you'll
You
go
wanna
find
be-
another one. And yeah, you just
You want to be Hank Hill? You go to the Hank Hill or King
Yeah.
of the Hill
Yeah.
world.
whatever. You go
Bart
find
Simpson,
whatever you
or
want.
this- yeah.
Find one that speaks to you. Mine's a little fox guy, he's like this big. So
But there are some generators, so I don't know if that's the best way to describe them. But
mhm.
we'll put those in the show notes. Visually impaired and blind. Anything on this front? I feel like there was, but now I'm pulling from memory. That would be a tough one since this is a visual medium. But I'd be curious to see what kind of advancement there is in this area. You know what I mean?
Answered that in the chat, but I wanted to bring it up again anyway. On my
Go for it.
YouTube channel, I have a link to a channel called Ally VR, which is for accessibility in VR specifically. And Jay, you might be interested since they're in Japan.
Cool.
So, but that's linked in my YouTube channel in there, so you can learn more all about that.
I love this. I mean, I think accessibility, we don't need to put it necessarily to blind, but deaf, disabled, there's a mental is that thing I think we've all talked about, that there's a lot of people who are either socially, anxiety is a heavy one, but some of that stems from autism. My sister's autistic. There's a lot of accessibility things that I think VR can reach on. I know that definitely when you say visually impaired, some people have like a very small pinhole that they can see. And so VR can be used for that. And I think we'll see more of that in the future, just like gaming has grown to have new controllers that are easy to access. I know a guy who's one of the best at a game in the world, and he uses only his feet because he has a controller that he can do that. And it's like one of the few things that he can enjoy in his life. And so he's gotten so good at it. He's better than people with hands. So I don't know. I mean, it's just, I love to see that kind of stuff, but maybe that's a growing thing. We're getting there kind of a deal.
Wow. What app was that sign language interpreter from? Those were different avatars. That's from VR Chat. So I believe she was using an Index, which has more individual finger control. But the Oculus Quest 2 now has controlless, or what's the word, controllerless, where you can just use your hands like this for many experiences. It's an emerging tech, so it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, where it gets weird is interlocking fingers. You can see that cameras have a hard time trying to figure that out, but it's really good out the gate. Could it be a resource of brick and mortar churches to provide headsets? Cheddars, you did this, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I did. It could be the question is, could it be resource? Yeah. So there's actually a bigger need for that than you realize. There are people who are lonely, who are stuck at home, who want to interact with Christians, and they don't have the technical prowess or motivation to get into it unless they are handheld. So at my local church, we ended up equipping back like 2 years ago, it feels like now, 20 Oculus Quests with prayer warriors, with about 8 of them sticking around for a year later. And so that was really cool. We ended up equipping them with Quest 2s, but we had to spend 2 to 4 hours with each person just to be able to teach them, how do you get into alt space? How do you get to the world? And then how do I give you a high five? Stuff like that. And
That's awesome.
yeah, there is a need to supply the headsets, but there's actually there will be a big need for any church that wants to get their congregation into VR to have someone walk through the simple steps of install the app, get them set up with an account, and go for it.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir. What platform is the best for legacy 2D hardware? It just depends on your need for youth, rec room, for all others, alt space.
Hey DJ.
Yep.
Hey, real quick on the last question, I think too, as augmented reality really takes the stage and gets bigger and bigger, and more people will have devices even on them constantly, like the cell phone. I think it's going to be kind of cool to see possibly in real life churches merging the Metaverse Church into the church service. So you're actually both, you're listening to the same preacher, and you're sitting next to an avatar. They're sitting next to because you can have cameras around.
That day's coming, I think.
I know. I
100%.
think it will. I think it will.
Soon.
I think that's going to be cool.
I'd also say VR chat again for desktop is pretty good. If that's what we're, unless we're saying not VR at all. It's kind of hard whenever it's, but I see a lot, I'd say, I don't even know what the numbers are, but like probably half of at least the people in VR chat are not actually even in VR. I see a lot, at least where the places I go, there's a lot of people that just don't even have VR. They're just on desktop.
Yeah, it's true.
Yep.
That was interesting. We all said VR chat's our favorite metaverse. I thought that was an interesting part of the webinar. It's a good point. Eileen brings about overhead costs. Yeah, you need internet, you need a functioning computer. So like budget wise, you do need some fundamental things. I guess maybe perhaps for us in this space, it was kind of like we already had this equipment. But if you're starting from just like scratch, budget for internet, budget for computer, budget for VR. Absolutely. Maybe somebody can Google this for me. How large is the VR audience in America today? I don't know. Across, if you're talking PlayStation, that's going to add a ton. The whole VR community, I don't know. Well,
I saw this is Zuckerberg's. I don't know if it's right. Didn't he say a billion in VR?
I think he wanted.
Right. Well, no.
$1 billion.
That's what he
wants
wants by 2025.
Yeah, he's got a goal to have that many by that time.
I was
not $1 billion now.
No, it can't be. There's got to be at least a couple billion in the metaverse in terms of gaming, streaming, all the different applications.
Right. Yeah, the whole
the VR's got to be smaller. Yeah.
So a quick thing is in 2020, 50 to 80 million people in the U.S. And just in the U.S.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well,
yep. So we talked about licensing is covered when there's CCLI. Are those AR glasses you're wearing? Oh, that was, yes. El Michelle was wearing AR. Well, no, it was more like the snap glasses where it takes pictures of your day. So I don't think they were true AR. AR is going to be a whole other beast.
Yeah.
Let's see. The church is Museum for Saints, but I wonder if there are ways that museums of art galleries are using AR from which we might take inspiration. Do you all know any platforms in that realm that you might recommend for exploration? I don't think the app exists, but there was one cool one where you were walking around an art gallery. That was pretty fantastic. So like when you talk about VR, it really opens the door for like anything, like museums, art galleries, that type of stuff.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
And there's a lot of artists that put it their own, and this may not quite answer the question, but they have their own galleries in VR. So we got a number of our church members that have their own worlds that you can go and see their in real life art. It's pretty cool. So that's another neat thing. Yep. Not AR, but.
So Riddick asks, how long do the custom world builds that you are doing weekly for VR Church? That's a great question. I should know that. I don't. I don't know if Alina or Alice, Cheddars, I guess it depends on the complexity of the build. But my guess is anywhere between 5 to 10 hours. Just depends on what it is. But we're doing complex things. When I first did world building, I kind of introduced the idea to the church, and it was the woman at the well. So I came in there and I put the well down and put water, I put a little frog on the side. That was like the beginning of world building. And that took me, 30 minutes to do. But now they're building like this massive experience. But I think there's 2 teams of 2 and 3 for us that take multiple hours to do that. And maybe if someone's here, they can, from the build team, they can answer that on the chat.
Yeah. Also, when I was trying to help facilitate the galleries that we were doing at Cornerstone, it was approximately about like 8 hours of work for maybe 2 or 3 people each at most. So at most 16 hours per world build, I would say.
Oh, wow.
As long as you're just doing kit objects. So
yeah, kit out, that's important. What are the ramifications of the next big thing mentality of the metaverse? Do you abandon an old space when you discover something new? We don't. That hasn't been our thing, but of course, it's only been 6 years. 10 years from now, is there going to be something way better than alt space? Like, is alt space the MySpace at this point? It could be. So I don't know. It's for us, we don't have an attitude of abandoning when something new comes out, but what is the best platform? Where are people gathering? That's more of the value than something shiny. Because there have been some platforms that have come out. Chill Out VR. There's another one, Neos VR. Look really cool, but we didn't abandon VR chat to go to those. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on this one.
Yeah, just go where the people are, I guess. Yeah, it probably will change in the future, but
I plan to take the good news into the cyber. Yeah, go ahead, Coco.
I would say don't abandon if it's working, because those people still need ministry as well. I would just say expand.
Yeah, expand is good. Kingdom expansion.
Omar, I plan to take the good news into the cyberspace beyond what I have. However, I'm concerned about people going into the meta experience and spending most of their life in it. Do you have any thoughts about addiction to the hyper sensual experience? So we addressed a little earlier that the average time in VR is like 35 to 45 minutes, because I know there are pro users that can go for hours, but for most people, it's like, whew, after 45 minutes, like, man, I need a little bit of a break. So, and even for me, like when I do like an hour of church, an hour 15, I take it off. I'm like, whew, let me get a little break going. So I don't find it to be an addictive technology, like binge watching Netflix or the smartphone. That's even like all those techs are even way more addicting to me. At this point in the technology, I don't find it to be addicting. I don't know if other people may have different experiences. Maybe when it gets to a real like glasses level where I can just turn it on and off, but I still think the brain needs a break. I don't know. Anybody else have a thought on this?
I mean, it has, obviously every tool has its downsides. I mean, there are some dangers of people getting so immersed in it and that's probably some of the concern people have, that don't understand the metaverse. They're like, oh my gosh, this is but there's a lot of tools that we use that are neutral in some degree. To some degree, it's neutrality. It's how you use it. And so I think it's important for us to realize that there are people in there that probably that is where they spend a lot of their day and they're trying to find hope and community. And we just need to go in there, use that tool, and then show them maybe a better way than maybe being, addicted to a tool. And that just comes with discipleship and time. Every tool has every tool has its negatives and positives. So, but I don't think and I'm not sure that's the heart of the question by the person that posted, but I've had that a lot. A lot of people ask that, like, aren't we like promoting a world that is going to be damaging to people? And I'm like, well, the world is damaging to people. Our job is to go into the dark world with whatever tools that aren't sinful to reach them and then to help them see a better way. So, and anyway, it gets into a lot of deep stuff, but that is a question that comes up a lot.
Yeah, I do find it funny though that some of the most dedicated people to like world building and stuff, they're comfortable, spending easily 16 hours in a day in virtual reality. So like back when I was first in, on Sundays, I would stick around for 16 hours answering questions, taking people on world tours, praying for them after service. And then Alice is another great example where I would find her up at the weirdest hours, even though she's in the UK. It's like I think it just depends on the individual of what their comfort level is for how long it is a good amount of time to spend in VR.
Yeah. Someone was asking about a world template for Unity to then build upon. I'm sure that will be evolved into the ministry wiki. But my initial thought would be use the in-game assets of AltSpace VR.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, feel free to agree, disagree. I believe the metaverse is happening. Just a couple more questions. I believe the metaverse is happening whether people like it or not. And if the church doesn't move, then it will be missing out on a generation. The only barrier I have is communion. It will be a difficult barrier for the institution I work for with people who only attend church in VR. How do you guys share the table? So we talked about baptism, communion, and those elements. And that's tough, like having those conversations with your church leaders, particularly if that's a hard doctrinal stance. It's going to be more of an evolving conversation, I think. And I think that's it, except for this last one. Is there a way for us to connect that's on this webinar? This is a pioneering mission for me, and it's good to interact with this group. So one thing they will see in the show notes is an ability to join a cohort or a Telegram group, so you can check out those details. But yeah, so that is the last question I saw. My goal was to answer all the questions, so I think that is it, my friends.
I did a cut off of the questions, and I was answering some in chat.
Oh, you did? So you might have repeated some. It's all right.
Yep.
But for the on-demand, maybe that was helpful for people watching later to verbalize the questions. All right, Marlo, thank you so much. Great job, everyone. Thank you, Nathan and Lindley. Really appreciate that. Pamela Johnson, thanks so much. And so, hey, guys, that is it. Panelists, thanks so much for hanging out for multi-hour and for answering some questions, giving your input. This is our first one, so love to have some feedback on the webinar. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If there's some things you liked, you didn't like, panelists, same thing. Moderators, admins who are watching, same idea. We'll probably do a webinar next month because we're going to be on the Carey Nieuwhof podcast. And from what I understand, he has a massive audience. So I'm sure that's going to lead to more, hey, we want to learn more about the metaverse, which will lead to another webinar since we unfortunately can't talk with each leader one-to-one. So, yeah. Thank you, my friends. Nothing but love to you. And thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Fareen. Thank you, Narelle. Dustin, appreciate it. Jate, what's up? You guys take care. Nothing but love.
Thanks,
Adios.
Love you guys.
Thanks,
See
everyone.
ya.
Love you guys.
Blessings, all the buys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Caleb. Adios.